16. It was 1975. In Las Vegas, before a packed house of 2,500 in the showroom of the Hilton International Hotel, Elvis Presley had just finished his last scheduled number, but instead of disappearing backstage and sprinting to his dressing room, he remained standing in front of the mic. The majority of the press reports were totally wrong, he told the audience, and he wanted to tell it like it was, set the record straight. For instance, he said, "The other night I had the flu real bad. Someone started the report that I was strung out. If I ever find out who started that, I'll knock their GD head off. I've never been strung out in my life, nor," he went on, "had he ever taken drugs." This brings a smile to the faces of Red West, Sonny West and Dave Hebler, who were all working for him as bodyguards at that time. According to them, Presley, like many show business personalities, had considerable experience with many types of drugs. Recalls Red West, "He takes pills to go to sleep. He takes pills to get up. He takes pills to go to the John. And he takes pills to stop him from going to the John. There have been times where he was so hyper on uppers that he has had trouble breathing, and on one occasion he thought he was going to die. His system doesn't work anymore like a normal human being's. The pills do all the work for him. He is a walking pharmaceutical shop. He has smoked marijuana, but he doesn't like to smoke it because it burns his throat. He takes uppers and downers and all sorts of very strong painkillers, Percodan and the stuff they give terminal cancer patients. He has often got prescriptions in the names of a lot of the boys, and from time to time he had a doctor, not one named in this book, who used to make up his prescriptions, but has since vanished. Yes, he knows a lot about drugs." Sonny West shrugs and says, "There is a whole sickness thing that is going to happen to him. His system is just shot to hell." Dave Hebler, a man who has dedicated the past 18 years of his life to the study of karate, is more incredulous than Red or Sonny. "After getting to know the scene with Elvis, I was surprised. It is absolute insanity that a human being would want to commit slow suicide, which I feel he is doing with the drugs. I can't understand how anybody can deliberately set about to do himself in. Here's a guy, one of the most popular persons in the world. He can have anything he wants. He has the means. He could have been a fantastic physical specimen. It is hard for me to understand how he can deliberately set out to destroy himself. It seems he is bent on death. The thing about him is that Elvis doesn't care. He doesn't give a fuck. I can't find the words to say it strong enough. I mean, he is a fascinating person, the most fascinating human I have ever met. He is a composite of contradictions. He is like a ping-pong ball going down the hallway. You never know from one minute to the next whether he is going to point a gun at somebody, or he is going to kiss them, or what. It sounds bizarre, but I am really struggling to find the words to emphasize that particular facet about the changeability in his personality." Red West is convinced that the massive doses of various pills have taken a toll not only on Presley's body, but also on his personality. The continual confections of great highs and lows have completely warped his senses. It must be pointed out that the bodyguards, particularly Red West and Sonny West, were not innocent bystanders. From the very first time that Presley discovered what a mild Dexamil or a mild Dexedrine could do to lift the spirits or kick off a day after only a few hours sleep, they were right along with him. Both Red and Sonny openly admit that from 1960 all through the period they were on movie locations with Presley, they were flying most of the time on uppers. "There was no other way we could keep up with him," says Sonny. "He would never get any sleep. Then comes 6 in the morning for an early call, and we would be beat. So he would give us these uppers and we would drink coffee all day. After a while, we graduated with him into stronger pills like T-Sputal and Escatrol. We were there, right in with him. Don't get the idea we're angels. And if we were still wired when it was time to go to bed, he would give us tranquilizers, like Valium, although we have taken much stronger stuff than that toward the end. Stuff like Placidil, which really knocks you for a loop. He would give us this stuff. Some of the time we would ask him for it, but other times we really just wanted to get some sleep, natural sleep. On some of those movies, while Elvis was wired and high as a kite, we would sometimes sneak away off the studio lot and go to a vacant studio and hide under props and stuff and sleep while he was before the cameras. It was the only way we could get any real sleep, because he would be going like a steam train all day and only get a few hours sleep. In the early days that man had a tremendous constitution. He would never stop. There were other times when he was going to get high, he sort of demanded that you get up there with him. Sometimes he would stand in front of you and watch you take the stuff because there was some stuff he gave me. I don't know what it was, but I would break out in a sweat. So often he would give me a handful of pills and I would ditch them. He knew this, so he would stand in front of me with a glass of water. The several years, I just plain refused them and this upset him. Eventually, he quit offering them to me. In the light of Presley's traditional image, the bodyguard stories seem incredible, but all three back them up with offers to take a lie detector test if anyone cares to challenge them. Past Red West says that during the 1960s, Presley was mostly involved with uppers, amphetamines, but toward about 1970, he started taking the downers. He had taken them before and that's when he had his first weight problem. But he started into them heavier in 1970 and got particularly heavier into them in 1972, after Priscilla left him for Mike Stone. It went on right up until we left him in 1976, when the situation had gotten ridiculous. Despite all Red saw, however, he could never say that Presley ever had any experience with heroin. The fact that his pills were an important part of his life was demonstrable as far back as 1960, just after the completion of GI Blues, Presley's first movie after his return from the Army. Presley had planned a weekend's rest and relaxation in Las Vegas for his Memphis Mafia. The group, Presley, Sonny West, Joe Esposito, his cousin Gene Smith, Lamar Fike and Charlie Hodge, took off from Los Angeles in a white Cadillac limousine and a Mark V Lincoln. Elvis, says Sonny, had been to Vegas back in 1956, but me and a few others had never been there. We were all excited. Well, we take off in high spirits, and halfway there we stop at Barstow. Elvis asks Gene to give him his kit bag. It was Gene's responsibility to look after Elvis's kit bag. Elvis said that he wanted to brush his teeth or something. Well, we really knew what he wanted. He kept his uppers in his kit bag. It was then we discovered that Gene had left it back at the hotel in Los Angeles. Instead of shrugging it off, Elvis really got mad, so mad that he said for us to get back in the car. We were not going to Vegas now. We were going back to LA. We were all down. So after being halfway there, he decides to drive back because he hadn't got his little kit bag with his pills in it. Elvis decides to do the driving, and he is cussing and yelling at us. We're down and we're tired and Gene starts to doze off. Every time he does, Elvis hits him on the chest with the back of his hand and yells at him, "There will be no goddamn sleep. Do you hear?" Old Gene jerks away. "No, boss." Joe in the back is dozing off and chewing gum at the same time. "Joe, goddammit, I said no sleeping." Joe replies, "I wasn't sleeping, just looking out the window." This is the way it went all the way back to Los Angeles. He was so pissed off at us. He was behaving like a damn child because he didn't get his way. The party trooped back to the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Charlie, Lamar and Sonny undressed and fell into bed. Just as they are dozing off, the telephone in their room rings. It's Joe Esposito. "Come on down, let's go." He decided to go again. Sonny remembers that when they got to the car, Presley had retrieved the kit bag and was dispensing uppers for the long ride to Las Vegas. Presley got high. Outside Los Angeles, the sparkling new car's left front tire blew out and the hubcap came off. Presley was mortified. "We can't go to Las Vegas without a hubcap. Damn it, I want to sell this car." They finally found the hubcap and continued their journey. They arrived in Las Vegas at about 11 in the morning, all wearing black mohair suits and sun glasses. "I think that's where we got the tab Memphis Mafia," Sonny remembers. "Because we dressed like mafia guys." Elvis in those days always demanded we wear suits and ties. As soon as they arrived, Presley went to the crap tables. In a few hours he had lost $10,000. After that, says Sonny, he found out he could play with the house money, where he would not win or would not lose, just sort of like a shill. After he started playing with the house money, he had the most incredible run of dice you had ever seen. One guy who was bidding on his throws won a fortune and wanted to give some money to Elvis, but he refused. That weekend, according to Sonny, with a little help from Presley's friends the Pills, they slept about 2 hours. In the early days, says Red West, the uppers were really just a way for Presley and his boys to squeeze a bit more fun out of life. I know they are dangerous, particularly the way we took them, but it really didn't start out as anything sinister. For instance, they came in very handy when playing football. Elvis organized a touch football league called Elvis Presley Enterprises, says Red. We also had a pick upside when we lived in Los Angeles and played other teams from the television and movie studios. Lee Majors was a big player in those days, so was Michael Parks and Gary Lockwood and a whole lot of other stars. Elvis played, but of course we gave him plenty of protection. At these games we would swallow a couple of uppers, and we have played as much as 4 and 5 games in one afternoon. Going into the night, people would see us and wonder how we could do it. Well, that's how. Occasionally, Elvis would give us stuff to take for our injuries, and our aches and pains and bruises and sprains. They were painkillers. After being 5 or 6 hours in the fairground in Memphis on those dodgems, Sonny remembers, we were bruised all over, so we gradually got into the painkillers, but still nothing like Elvis was taking toward the end. I have seen him with literally dozens of bottles of every different kind of pill. Now, he knows a lot about them. He knows what pill to mix with another pill. He knows the dosages and the exact result. Sometimes he has miscalculated and had bad effects, but most of the time he knows what he is doing. At least he thinks he does. He has got medical directories on the pills and he knows the color codes. Show him a pill or tell him its color on the capsule, and he can identify it in a second. Red says that the movie going public would notice the difference in Presley if they could compare his pre-army films with those he made after he got out. From GI Blues on, you can notice the way he speaks. He had to make a real effort to slow his speech down. He would talk like a machine gun in those movies where he was wired with uppers. He was high the whole time and we were most of the time, too. Any kind of overindulgence in drugs can produce bizarre behavior. At times it has triggered Presley to go on the most lavish and generous of spending sprees. Someone with him would have only to hint at wanting something, and Presley would buy it for them on the spot. Of course, there were many times when he gave simply for the pleasure of giving. His generosity could never be in question. There are other times, when he is wired, to use Dave Hebler's expression, in which his moods and actions assume a black, frightening violence. There were 2 occasions when violent rage was turned on Red West, the man who has given most of his life to the protection of Presley. In 1973, Presley was performing in Las Vegas at the Hilton. Suddenly, at the end of a song, he completely lost his voice. Red and Sonny cannot say what caused that to happen, but both theorize he had taken so many pills that his throat suddenly dried up. He came off stage in a panic, and Red and Sonny called in Dr. Elias Ghanem and Dr. Sidney Boyer. Dr. Boyer, using special equipment, cleared Presley's throat of a substantial amount of mucus and congestion. After less than 10 minutes, Presley was able to go on with his show. Red recalls that Presley had a lot of faith in Sidney Boyer. Well, placed faith, because the man was an expert in dealing with various throat problems. Around about that time, says Red, he was going to Dr. Boyer every day, and Dr. Boyer was doing a great job in clearing his throat. It got to be an obsession about going to Dr. Boyer, although there was no doubt the guy knew what he was doing. One night, after he had kept us up all day, we finally hit the sack. I took a sleeping pill and was just dozing off. It must have been about 9 in the morning. I knew it was ridiculous to expect to get any sleep. Suddenly, I got a telephone call. He wanted to see Dr. Boyer right away. I may have said something like, "Hey, man, you don't go on until tonight. What is the reason for getting it done so early?" Anyway, he was bugged or something. I told him I had just taken a sleeping pill, and he said, "Well, go back to bed." I knew the tone in which he said that. He was sort of saying I was letting him down. I said, "No, I'm up. It's my job. I'm going with you." I hurriedly got dressed and went down the hallway and into his suite. Sonny was there and he could see I was pissed off. Well, Elvis goes into his room and grabs his M16. He says, "I'm going to blow your fucking head off." Red, despite his rough and readiness, doesn't resort all that much to heavy swearing, but he was angry. "Shoot, you motherfucker," he said. "Go ahead, shoot. We only have one life to give you. Shoot." Sonny West was trying to calm everyone down. Red was madder than hell, and there was this man pointing an M16 gun at him. I thought something was really going down. Sonny recalls. Red was angry and Elvis had the gun and he is bugged. Then the next moment, Elvis turns away and winks at me, like it was nothing at all. That's how quick that guy can change. It was after that incident that Presley dictated a long, rambling letter to Red on philosophy and psychic strengths. About 6 months later, a similar confrontation took place, once again between Presley and Red West. Presley had finished a show and was holding court in his suite at the hotel. There were 5 or 6 women in his suite. There was no romantic interest involved. Presley was simply showing them his karate tricks. One woman, a married lady, was entranced by the show of karate and asked Presley how he did it. In the ensuing demonstration, Presley broke the girl's ankle, completely by accident. Sonny and Red remember the girl limping from the bedroom trying not to cause a fuss. One of the main reasons, of course, was that her husband did not know she was in the suite, and she didn't want him to know, lest the incident be misinterpreted. Whether Presley was aware he had broken the girl's ankle is not clear, but both Red and Sonny recall he made no effort to inquire about her well-being. She did have an operation which involved having a pin placed in her ankle, and at one point there was some question whether or not she would sue Presley. But before there was any talk of a suit, Red recalls, he had to run interference to keep the girl's husband away from Presley. She had eventually told her husband what had happened, and he wanted to straighten a few things out. The bad night started in the showroom of the Vegas Hilton. It was 1974. I'm backstage. Now Elvis has this thing of throwing scarves out to the audience. This night this girl had a scarf of her own, and she threw it to Elvis and he would throw it back to her. This went on and on. I guess she wanted him to come over and kiss her. Well, he was high. He threw the scarf back at her and told her not to throw it again. He started walking off stage, and she threw it again and it hit him right on the shoulder. No big thing. I saw this and I mentioned it to the security guard, who stopped it. but Elvis was really mad. Down in the dressing room he called us all and now there was a security guard there while all this was going on and he said, "How come somebody didn't stop the chick?" I told Elvis if I had gone out there and taken a scarf away from a girl, it would have looked bad. I would have made a fool of myself. All he had to do was keep the damn thing and the whole thing would have stopped there. That's what I said to him, but no more than just that. Well, when we got in the suite, he blew up. "Goddamn, don't you ever talk back to me in front of a security guard. You work for me." He went apeshit. Presley called Red everything in the dictionary of swear words and insults. "You red-headed cocksucker, you motherfucker." No man had ever called Red West those names and stayed with both feet firmly planted on the ground for too long. Red was sitting on a stool at the bar of the suite and Sonny West was there. Once again seeing an ugly situation develop, there was enough adrenaline pumping to light up a dozen city halls. Sonny had a bottle of water in his hand and said what he thought to be soothing words. "Oh, come on, Elvis." Presley flared. "You stay out of this," he said, knocking the water from Sonny's hand. "You never talk back to me in front of those guards." Red tried to explain that he wasn't talking back, just trying to say the way it was. "I was shocked." Red remembers. "The whole group was in there while he was swearing at me. Nobody has ever called me those names." When Red continued to try to explain, Presley reached for his long-barreled .22 Savage revolver, which was on his hip. Sonny recalls, Red was starting to go white and I saw it in his eyes. He was just this far off coming off the stool and decking Elvis. Elvis was about to pull that gun out and Red says, "Don't do it, Elvis. Don't pull that gun." And Elvis stopped dead, because he knew Red was ready to go to war and kick ass, but he wanted to pull it. He couldn't have got it out fast enough, but something in him saw something in Red's eyes. Red says that he just sat there and took it. "I knew if I had got off that stool that would have been the end of my job and security for my family. I thought, hell, let the crazy fool get it all out. Then I told him, the husband is out here looking for you. We've been trying to keep him away. You know, the husband of the gal whose ankle you broke in a karate demonstration?" And he yells back, "Where's the motherfucker? Bring him up here." His father, Vernon, was trying to cool him down, but Elvis was so high and so bugged nobody could talk to him, and all the time he is wearing this gun on his hip. It was a hairy situation. Jerry Schilling tried to talk to him and Elvis said, "Get the fuck out of here." Jerry didn't take too much of Elvis's shit either, and he just walked out of the room. Later in a calmer moment, Presley did face the situation of the girl whose ankle he'd broken. She signed a release not to sue. Presley paid all hospital bills and picked up the tab for her and her husband and some friends to see the show and stay at the hotel. Despite the obvious results that Presley's pill-taking binges have, he seems to learn very little from his excesses. In August 1975, he canceled out on his Las Vegas schedule after 2 appearances. Red relates, Joe Esposito called and said that an ambulance had taken Elvis away. He had taken so much of something that it had affected his breathing. "I was at home in Memphis when Joe called me. They said it was exhaustion or pneumonia. I had seen those breathing problems before." When Presley canceled out in Vegas, there was a problem. At one point he wanted to cancel right before a show, after the people were seated. It was typical that Colonel Tom told him, according to Sonny, "I can get you out of the shows tomorrow, and we are going to have to make good the money, but I'm not going out there now that the people are seated and tell them you're not appearing. If you want to do it, go get your daddy to go out there on stage and tell them." Sonny recalls that nobody was too keen to do that. Presley went on that night, and the Colonel told him to clear out of Vegas if he was sick and cancel his remaining shows. Red West remembers what started the whole situation. Sonny was in Vegas waiting, and Red, Charlie Hodge and Presley were to arrive on a Jet Commander private plane. Presley had bought the plane only 4 or 5 days before the engagement. On the plane he took some of his pills. Red says, he started to get very hyper. He was in the back of the plane. Suddenly Presley yelled, "I can't breathe. Drop the oxygen mask. Drop the oxygen mask." Red recalls that his boss was gasping and that he and Charlie Hodge got very apprehensive. The oxygen mask didn't seem to do Presley any good. His breathing was badly messed up, says Red. "About that time I noticed an air vent on the floor, and there was a lot of air coming out. Well, I told Elvis to lie down on the floor and put his face over the air vent where the air was whooshing through. Then Red and Charlie heard words from Presley that shot them through with fear. "I'm not going to make it," he gasped. "Land." An emergency landing was made in Dallas, and Presley and Red and Charlie went to a motel for 5 hours while the pilot changed planes. He was okay soon after that, says Red. The effects of the pill had worn off. Sonny and Red say that they have seen Presley wiped out on the painkiller Demerol, complete with head nodding and slack jaw. They recall that on one such jag, it was suggested that someone take a photograph of him so that he could see what he looked like at those times. All of them agree if it had not been for the eagle eye of Dr. George Nicopolis, Presley may have had a lot more trouble with drugs. Both Red and Sonny say that Dr. Nick like Joe Esposito, would often take capsules and drugs that Presley had smuggled in and replace them with harmless vitamins. Dr. Sidney Boyer, who treated him for his throat problems, and Dr. Ghanem were not as close to Presley and probably knew nothing of his abuses. Red, Sonny and Dave have all seen Presley in a complete stupor from his pill taking. There have been, says Sonny, actual shows that he has done that he can't remember. The audience must know something is going on. Sometimes he gets up there and talks to the audience instead of singing. He will give his philosophies on life and it's very boring. People go there to see the old Elvis magic. One night he did a damn karate exhibition for 28 minutes straight in Las Vegas. People were walking out all over the place. I never saw a word in the press about it. He lives a charmed life. Sometimes, he will forget the sequence of songs, and he will forget the lyrics to songs. Other times there are songs scheduled to be sung, and he will just refuse to do them. On the other hand, says Dave Hebler, when he is straight and he is slimmed down and he is just going on his own energy, there is no showman like him on earth. He is a born performer. The whole Memphis Mafia knows about Presley's incessant and potentially dangerous habit of taking every conceivable kind of upper, downer and tranquilizer. And there are others who know, to some degree, about Presley's pill-popping habits. Two undercover narcotics detectives, while on tour in the various cities, Presley, with his passion for anything to do with police work or playing cops and robbers, often had very close contacts with the local cops. There were several detectives in the Denver Police Department whom Presley got particularly close to. Colonel Tom always had close contacts with cops throughout the country. If the city concerned would allow cops to moonlight, he would often recruit them to help out in security work, paying exactly the same rates the city would. This practice always promoted good relations between Presley's entourage and the local police. The detectives that Presley got to know in Denver introduced him to some undercover narcotics policemen, who, by virtue of their job, will remain anonymous. Red relates, wherever you go you can pretty much assess what kind of a police department a city has got. These Denver cops, and Sonny and Dave can back me up, are about as sharp and as professional as you will find anywhere in the country. They are sharp, straight, and there is no nonsense. No corruption. Well, we had been in Vail, and Elvis somehow got this really heavy pain-killing stuff. He had the prescription. Don't ask me how he got it, because it will mean we have to put someone on the spot. Anyway, in Denver he had this infection from an ingrown toenail. Now the police doctor comes along, who is introduced by these two narc cops. Now the cops don't know at this time anything about Elvis's habit, but then Elvis asks for a heavy painkiller, and the police doc won't give it to him. Then, the police doc shows this prescription that Elvis has to the undercover cops. Now the cops know that this is very, very heavy stuff. When the cops see this, they start to wonder. The narc cops kept a close eye on Presley. Suddenly they noticed his highs and lows, and they are experts at this. Presley was entertaining them lavishly, but the undercover police were getting uneasy. Presley seemed to be getting high. Dave Hebler recalls that both detectives mentioned their observations to him and Red. They were evasive, but it was obvious the cat was out of the bag. Nothing was said to Presley. He left Denver, but returned a few weeks later. In February 1976, Dave Hebler picks up the story. Now we go into Denver and we check into a hotel. It's at this point these two undercover cops have a talk with Elvis about what they thought was going down. Well, we hadn't been in that hotel more than 2 hours when all of a sudden we're leaving. Elvis tells us we have to go into Las Vegas and not to bother bringing our stuff. The reason he is leaving is that the police had talked to him about going into a sanitarium and drying out and that he was a complete embarrassment to them because they were narcotics officers and he's stoned out of his mind. He's stoned out of his mind and flaunting it right in front of them. You know, this is kicking them right in the chest. Red West adds, it must be stressed that these guys told Elvis that no one would know. It would be handled right. They would oversee this drying out process personally. His answer was, you think I'm hooked? You think I can't handle it myself? I'm strong enough to take care of it. I'm strong enough to get off the stuff. Now these cops had seen all these pills, and they knew he was taking all sorts of stuff that would screw him up. They couldn't live with themselves that Elvis was doing this to himself, because they liked him a lot. They felt the same way we felt about him. We just wanted to see him straight, that's all. The greatest present that anyone could give me way was to tell me that Elvis Presley is straight, slim and handsome and just the same as when I knew him back. A lot of what went on was as much our fault as it was his because we would indulge him like a child. Dave Hebler relates, God, that man can sometimes act like he is a 2-year-old. Sometimes, you think you are looking after a child. You can't help love the guy, but it gets you so pissed off at him. There was a time in 1975 when Red, risking Presley's wrath, decided to have a heart talk with him about how he had changed. Red treated him as if he were his kid brother, although Presley is 18 months older than he. This night he wasn't high. He had taken a tranquilizer, And I just sort of came out with it. Because when you start to think of all the gifts he has bought us and all the good deeds he has done, it's hard to just sit there and take it without caring for the guy. I mean, man, I love the guy. There were times I felt like beating the shit out of him, but there is no getting past it. I love him even if he doesn't love me. This night I told him that all the shit he was swallowing had changed his personality. I told him I wished he could get back to like he was in the old days. Well, he surprised the hell out of me. He didn't flash with anger. He just said quietly, "Yeah, I agree with you." And he didn't have too much to say that night. So I thought I had done a really good deed. I left with tears in my eyes and all that jazz. I was a bit emotional and I thought, well, things may be different from now on. The good old fun days are going to come back. The next morning I get up, and he is on the couch in the suite at the Hilton and I ordered breakfast for him. I knew something was bugging him. I could see his face. He was building up to something. He said to nobody in particular, but I knew it was aimed at me. So, I'm not myself anymore. Huh? God damn it. I wish people I don't want to hear all that shit would stay out of my personal life. I'm going to do what the fuck I want to do. I don't need anybody preaching to me. At this time I moved out into the kitchen. I was mad. He had been stewing on the talk all night and suddenly he does a complete reversal thing. I was so mad I punched the refrigerator, and he follows me out and he has calmed down and he says, "What think I give you guys all these gifts for? It's to make up for the hell I put you through, for the work you guys do. That's why I give you these gifts." "Do you?" I replied, "Yeah, but the talk we had last night didn't mean anything, right? It was just going in one ear and out the other." And he said, "I'm going to do what I want to do and that's the way it is." At that stage, I gave up on him. I never talked to him about the drug stuff ever again. In Las Vegas, in the inner circles, rumors about Presley flew thick and fast. Vegas is a small town and secrets are hard to keep. Some of the rumors were half true. A lot of them were outrageously inaccurate, but the boys did their best to keep the rumors to a minimum. Sonny West remembers a time when there was a particularly bad rumor going around, but one that wasn't far from the truth. Still, he felt it was his job to take any steps necessary to have it quashed. Jackie Wilson, the singer, was a good friend of ours. He was a very nice dude, and the people who worked for him were very close to us. Anyway, one of the guys who knew him called me up and told me there was something he wanted to talk to me about. Well, I went over to the Flamingo Hotel, where Jackie was playing, and this guy who knew Jackie introduces me to two guys. They were from New York, if you know what I mean. This was at the end of 1973, and Elvis used to get a lot of massages from a guy who worked for one of the hotels. I won't say which hotel because that would identify him, but this guy used to get a $100 tip from Elvis every time he massaged him. Also, Elvis would sign a check and it was in triplicate. This guy not only got paid and tipped, but he had a scheme where he would present the bill twice, until I caught up with him. So, he was a con man right from the word go. I'll just call this guy Big Bill, which is not his real name. Anyway, it seems that one of these guys from New York was getting a massage, and this Big Bill starts shooting his mouth off to him that he has massaged Elvis Presley and that he is a head drug taker. My mind gets buzzing, and I think, if Big Bill told a perfect stranger this, how many people has he told? Well, the guy who knew Jackie Wilson says that he is telling me this because he knows how much Jackie Wilson loves Elvis, and I thank him for his concern. Now one of the guys from New York is pretty heavy, if you know what I mean. He says to me, "How do you want to handle this? If you have any problems, call me, and I will take care of it." I mean, Big Bill was out in the desert outside Vegas. If I had given the word to this guy, I could have very easily given the word. All I had to do was call up and say do it. Someone in that city would have done that guy in, and they may have found his body in the desert. It would have been another unsolved case of finding a body in the desert, but I didn't want any of that stuff. That was going too far. But we had to shut the guy up. Anyway, I got the telephone number of Big Bill and I called him. I said, "Could I speak to Big Bill?" He answered the telephone and then I said, "You don't know me. I'm just telling you. You have been shooting your mouth off about a certain celebrity that used to give you a $100 tip, and you have been talking about how he is ahead, and I tell you now, stop it, man, or you are gone." I then hung up. Elvis didn't tell me to do it. I was acting on my own. In fact, I never told him about it. I just handled it that way because there was no use getting him upset over something if it could be handled. Red says it was often best to keep a lot of their talk away from Presley because he would often do things to test a person's loyalty. I remember, says Red, one time we were in a hotel in Colorado, and he called my room and told me to come see him, that there was something he wanted to talk to me about. Well, I got straight to his room and Elvis is lying out of it on the floor. I thought, oh well, he just whacked himself out with something. So I undressed him and put him to bed. Just lifted him up and put him in bed and covered him up. But later I got to thinking, when he spoke to me on the telephone, he was completely straight, like he hadn't taken a thing, and I got to that room in less than a couple of minutes. Now no drug hits you that hard. So then I suspected that he wasn't asleep or out of it at all. He was wide awake and just faking it, just to see how I would handle him. He tested us a lot of times like that. He always wanted to know if we were really dedicated to him. Of course in those days, there was very little any one of us wouldn't have done for him.